Wow, my clock on the wall is a minute ahead of my clock on the computer, and I almost missed the 4:44. Good morning. Oh, yes, I was busy checking email, and I looked over at the computer, and it still says 4:43. And then I happened to look at the video screen, and it said 4:44, and I turned and I looked, and sure enough. Oh, anyway, it must have just changed because it's still 4:44. In any case, as I said, good morning. I was really surprised last night that just a couple minutes before 7, the first person showed up for my meeting. And we ended up with 6 of us. Some of the people that said they were coming didn't, and one young man who drove an hour to get here, I got to spend about another 45 minutes to an hour with him, well, 45 minutes probably, afterwards, just getting to chat with him, 21-year-old man from Colombia who lives, of course, now in the United States. Interesting starseed or gifted young man, whatever you want to call him. I really enjoyed chatting with him last night. And that's not what I'm going to talk about today, but I just mentioned that because I'm encouraged by the number of young people, some of them teenagers still, and others in their early 20s or 30s, people half or less than half my age, that are waking up and recognizing the gifts and the talents that are within them and recognizing that they have an identity that is beyond what most humans have realized for a long time. Maybe I'll mention a little bit more of that as I get into the talk. The title for today is the Urantia book, Knowing God as Love. And I wrote the blurb 45 minutes ago when I came out of the meditation room. I first heard of the Urantia book back in 1983 and read it at that time. While I have seen references to it since then, I never went back and read any more of it again until very recently. I discovered a website that includes the entire book online and even provides an audio version in conjunction with the text. It is found at www.urantia, that's spelled urantia.org, which allows you to read and perhaps listen to the entire book in 15 different languages. The main thing I like after listening to the first several chapters is that it makes clear something I have always felt to be true, that God is personal and can be known. As one of my friends said recently, quoting from the Bible, "He that loves knows God. He that loves not does not know God, for God is love." Love is always personal to me. I do find it interesting, and over the years I have felt it disconcerting when people paint the Creator as an impersonal force or refer to the Creator as it. I know some people see it that way, but I've never seen it that way. One of the reasons for in fact, that I disagree with Santos Bonacci and other scholars that are very brilliant individuals, and they say Jesus never existed in history, is because when I was a fundamentalist Christian and growing up, even before I even knew what fundamentalism was or before I distinguished what Christianity was, when I was just still in single digits, I knew God. And I knew Jesus as God. And there was an intimacy, there was a personal relationship there. And I can never, no matter what scholars may say, that, well, we don't find hardly any records in the early written by the earliest historians in the first century, we don't find hardly any mention at all of Jesus. There's a brief mention, I believe, in Josephus, but aside from that, they find no evidence that he even existed. And I just don't buy that. It doesn't feel right to me. I don't care about the scholarly search and the left brain rationalization of what they're looking for. Intuitively, I have known for a long time that God sends his Son to incarnate in this world. Now, the Urantia book says that the Son that incarnated as Jesus of Nazareth was actually Michael. I've heard other people say the same thing. The Book of Mormon, I think, teaches that Christ is Michael, the archangel, incarnating in flesh. I'm not even going to go into those arguments because I don't know, and it doesn't matter. To me, what matters is that God does incarnate in human flesh. God has a relationship with humanity. And it was interesting, which I had totally forgotten. Listen to this, folks. You're going to be surprised because the eternal Son of God, or the Christ, whatever you want to call that essence, is the feminine. Now, you don't usually refer to Son as feminine, do you? I don't. Not in English. That was the first time I ever heard mention, see, I read the book back then, but I didn't remember it, that the Son is actually the feminine part of God, or the part that materializes and has the ability to materialize, make matter. Matter is feminine. Materialization is a feminine process. To make that which is invisible visible. That's feminine. I love it. It's within all of us, whether we're male or female. So I guess it's not that big a stretch to say the Son of God is a goddess. Interesting. I always thought that the Holy Spirit was the one that was the feminine part of the triune Godhead. But no, in the Urantia book, at least what I heard yesterday as I listened to about 3 of the chapters, was that the Son is the goddess. And all things are made by the Godhead through the goddess. Makes perfect sense to me, even though I had never thought of it rationally in those terms. Now, I want to say something about books. One of my friends, who is, I guess he would be the nephew of one of my boyhood friends growing up in Bethany Church, became my friend yesterday, John Nagy. Probably shouldn't have named him, but I just did. Anyway, he sent me a thing about laws in the Bible, of things that were absolutely forbidden, and some of them carried a death penalty. And I said, yeah, and there are some people in this country that want to make the Bible our law form. And he said if they got away with it, he said that would create hell on earth. I totally agree. Love is the key, you see. My family, or certain members of my family, while they have disagreed with my theology over the years because they're still fundamentalist Christians, some of them have seen something in me that is very different, that I've always emphasized love. Why? Because love is about relationships with ourself, with God, and with each other. And ultimately, maybe, if I get around to that again, maybe with a special one that is total intimacy, physical spiritual, emotional, mental, total connection, one flesh, one soul, one spirit, with two personalities. God is personal. That's why we can be personal. Oh, I realize how difficult it has been on this journey of separation, where it looks like we're all separate from each other, and where we develop egos or personalities. And people say, well, you got to get beyond that. That's part of the Eastern lie. The Western lie is that we're born sinners. And I don't mind that if by sinner you mean somebody that forgot who they were. But if by sinner means that you were blemished or there was something in essence or inherently wrong with you, I don't buy that. That's a lie. There's nothing wrong with any of us. And there is something very personal about all of us. So the attempt of spiritual teaching to move you into the realm of the impersonal is just simply the same kind of BS, bullshit, that religionists have always done. It puts us further into separation. Because if we're trying to put aside our personality, we're defeating the whole purpose of becoming human, which is to develop an identity, to develop a personality, to express a personality, to express an ego. The young man said last night he's very much into who he was in past lives because because he feels if he could know for sure who he was in a past life, then he would probably have a better idea of what he's supposed to do here in this lifetime. And who does he think I am? He thinks I'm Jesus. Now I've heard that before too. I don't believe I was ever Jesus Christ. Okay? I just want to make that really clear. I have had a relationship with Jesus since I was a boy. I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old in church, and I found myself the only one still standing after prayer because I was lost in the heavens. I was connecting at a higher level. I don't remember the details of it. What I do remember is the embarrassment I felt when I came to myself and realized that I was out there all by myself and the only one in the whole place, except for maybe the minister behind the podium, standing up or in the pulpit. And I was embarrassed about that. But I got lost in God. And all my life, I've had a relationship with God and with Jesus. So that people should see Jesus in me doesn't totally surprise me. Not that I'm Jesus, but I am a son of God. And what I've tried to get you to understand is the same thing Jesus tried to get us all to understand. That we're all little Christs. We're all children of God, sons and daughters of God. We are all gods and goddesses. Jesus said, haven't you read in the scripture where the psalmist said, you are gods? When they tried to stone him for saying he was the Son of God. Obviously, Son of God means you're made of the same stuff God is. Indeed, we are. And that's what the Urantia book was pointing out very clearly and very plainly. And I recommend reading it. But don't get into books being the final word. Don't start thinking that the book is the answer. All they are is roadmaps that point us in directions and reveal certain things to us so that we can wake up and know them intimately as our own being, as our own self, if you will. And we can have a relationship with God as us. Not a God that lived 2,000 years ago and manifested, or in some other mythological time. No, God has always been incarnating, and at this time in 2012, the incarnation is taking on new meaning and new levels as we awaken, as people embrace the relationship of themselves to their higher self, to the higher powers, to the creative force. and many other names that you call it. And it's a love relationship or it isn't going to work. If it's just a head trip, if it's just knowledge without passion, it isn't going to work. You have to combine the knowledge with the passion, marry the two of them, and become the new creature by that marriage that is taking place in your heart, where the lower energies and the higher energies merge and become one and create the new being. And then we know God as love. And that was what the Urantia book, the little bit that I've read, actually listened to so far, that's what it reminds me of. And so I recommend that anything that reminds you of who we are in God and who God is in us, anything that teaches that is valuable at this time in our evolutionary process. And I encourage you to, if you feel it, if you resonate with it, go to the Urantia book. Go to urantia.org, and there's a whole bunch of chapters. Pick the ones that you feel you want to hear. I started at the beginning. There's lots of ones that I look down the list that I want to look at, but I thought, well, I'm going to start from the beginning again. And okay, you can do it your way, and that's how I'm doing it, and I may jump around. I don't know. In any case, I want to encourage you that you can know God as love. And God is not separate from you. God is your very life, your very essence, the very truth of who you are. And it's very personal, and it's very intimate. And there's no two of us that are alike, and that have the exact same path. But there's only one way to God, and that's through the Christ that's within each of us, or the divine that is within each of us, the Buddha that is within each of us, the prophet that is within each of us, the lover that is us. Namaste.